23 days after Brazil lifted the Jules Rimet in 1962, Telstar 1 launched. Football became visible to a continent at once. 4 years later, a small thief broke into Westminster Central Hall and stole the trophy itself. A dog named Pickles found it under a hedge in South London a week later. The Jules Rimet went to Wembley. Wembley filled. 1966, England. The 8th World Cup, and the first ever held in the English-speaking world. The 11th to the 30th of July. 16 teams. 8 stadiums, from Wembley in the south to the small grounds of the industrial north. The country that wrote the rules of football 100 years before was finally hosting its tournament. The game had come home. The only question left, could England win it? Before any of it could begin, the field had to be set. 16 teams, 4 groups of 4. You played everyone in your group once, 2 points for a win, 1 for a draw, win your group or finish second, and you went through to the quarter-finals. From there, it was sudden death. Quarter-final, semi-final, final, win or go home. But the road to England was missing an entire continent. 15 African nations had entered. All 15 withdrew, every single one. They were protesting a system that forced the winners of Africa's qualifying to play off against Asia for a single shared place at the finals. Africa, Asia, and Oceania, 3 continents, left to fight over 1 ticket. The African nations refused. They would not play for 1 place between them. And so, for the first time, the World Cup kicked off with no African team at all. Their protest worked in the end. 4 years later, Africa was given its own guaranteed place at the finals and has had one ever since. But in 1966, the door they left open belonged to someone else. Through it walked North Korea, a team the host nation did not even formally recognize. Unknown, unranked, dismissed before they kicked a ball. And alongside them, another first-timer, Portugal, arriving with a forward who was about to change everything. His name was Eusebio. 16 teams, 1 straight road to Wembley. It started here. 4 groups, 16 teams, 2 weeks to sort the contenders from the pretenders. The tables on screen carry every result, but 4 stories carried the round. Group 1 belonged to the hosts. England, in front of their own people at Wembley, did not concede a single goal. 3 matches, 3 clean sheets, a 0-0 draw with Uruguay to open, then Mexico and France both beaten 2-0. Solid, unspectacular, through. Group 2 was West Germany's. A 20-year-old Franz Beckenbauer announcing himself to the world, and a 5-0 demolition of Switzerland that stood as the biggest win of the entire tournament. Argentina went through alongside them, physical, ruthless, and on a collision course with the hosts. But Group 3 was where the giants fell. Brazil came to England as the 2-time defending champions, the kings of world football, with Pelé, the greatest player alive, and they were knocked out before the knockout rounds even began. Hungary beat them 3-1, with Florian Albert orchestrating everything, a performance for the ages. Then Portugal beat them 3-1 as well, and the lasting image of Brazil's tournament was Pelé, hacked down again and again with no protection from the referee, finally limping off the pitch wrapped in a blanket, a beaten man. The champions were out. Portugal and Hungary marched on. The dynasty was over. And then, in Group 4, the impossible. A small ground in the northeast of England. North Korea, the team nobody had wanted to let in, against Italy, one of the great powers of European football. 42nd minute. Pak Duik struck. 1-0. And it held. North Korea beat Italy. They knocked one of the favourites clean out of the World Cup and became the first team from outside Europe and the Americas ever to reach the knockout stage. The Italians flew home in disgrace, booed off the plane when they landed. Brazil, out. Italy, out. The tournament had its earthquake, and the quarter-finals were set. 8 teams left, single elimination. Win or your tournament is over. The bracket on screen tracks them all, but 4 quarter-finals, 2 semis, and 1 comeback for the ages. At Wembley, England met Argentina, and it turned into a war. Niggling, brutal, bad-tempered. The Argentine captain, Antonio Ratin, was sent off for arguing with a referee who did not even speak his language, and for several minutes he refused to leave the pitch at all. England won it 1-0, a single Geoff Hurst header, in a match remembered more for the ugliness than the goal. West Germany dismantled Uruguay 4-0, with 2 Uruguayans sent off. The Soviet Union edged Hungary 2-1, and at Goodison Park, the match of the whole tournament. Portugal against North Korea, and the fairy tale almost reached its perfect ending, because inside 25 minutes, North Korea led 3-0. 3-0. The unknowns from the far side of the world were within an hour of the World Cup semi-finals. And then Eusebio took the game by the throat. He scored once. He scored again. From the penalty spot, he scored a third. And before the game was gone, a fourth. 1 man, 4 goals. In barely half an hour, he turned 3-0 down into 4-3 up, and Portugal won it 5-3. The greatest comeback the World Cup had ever seen, and the end of the most romantic story the tournament had ever told. So, to the semi-finals. West Germany beat the Soviet Union 2-1, and at Wembley, England faced Portugal, the hosts against Eusebio, the deadliest forward in the tournament. This time, it was an Englishman who decided it. Bobby Charlton twice. The second, a sweeping strike of pure class. 2-0. Eusebio pulled one back from the penalty spot late, and then he walked off the Wembley pitch in tears. The best player in the whole tournament, beaten at the final step, weeping openly as he went. Portugal took 3rd place, beating the Soviet Union 2-1, the best finish by a tournament debutant in over 30 years. And at the very top of the bracket, 2 names remained. The hosts who had not conceded a goal all the way to the final. And West Germany, England against West Germany, for the World Cup. Everything an entire country had waited for came down to a single afternoon. The 30th of July. Wembley. Before the final at Wembley, Alf Ramsey had a choice. Jimmy Greaves was England's striker, the player who had scored 44 goals in 57 internationals before the tournament. Jimmy Greaves had a shin gash from the France group match that had not healed. Geoff Hurst, West Ham striker, had come in for Greaves at the quarter-final, scored the only goal against Argentina, started in the semi-final. Ramsey, in the days before the final, chose Hurst over Greaves. Greaves attended the final wearing a club blazer. Hurst started. 12 hours later, the choice had been made history. 30 July 1966. Wembley Stadium. 96,924 supporters. 396 million more watching on satellite. The Queen in the Royal Box. Kenneth Wolstenholme on the call. Bobby Moore, 25 years old, West Ham captain, leading England out. Uwe Seeler, also 29. Hamburger SV captain, leading West Germany. Ramsey's wingless wonders against Schön's rebuilt team. The Jules Rimet, recovered from pickles, polished, waiting on a plinth. 2 anthems, 1 ball. The whistle. 12 minutes, Helmut Haller, Siggy Held's cross. England failed to clear. Haller side foots past Banks. West Germany 1, England 0. 18 minutes, Geoff Hurst. Bobby Moore's quick free kick. Hurst glances a header in. 1-1. The partnership in motion. 78 minutes. Martin Peters. A scramble from a Hurst shot. Peters lashes it home. 2-1. Wembley believes. 89 minutes. Karl-Heinz Weber. Late free kick from distance. Germany force it in from close range. 2-2. Wembley silenced. Germany force extra time. 101 minutes. Geoff Hurst turns and shoots. The ball cannons off the underside of the crossbar. Does it cross the line? Referee Gottfried Dienst walks to his linesman, Tofik Bahramov, the man history calls the Russian linesman from Azerbaijan. Bahramov signals, goal. England 3, West Germany 2. No goal line technology to settle it. This question lives for 60 years. 120 minutes, Bobby Moore's pass, Hurst clear, fans already streaming onto the pitch. Some people are on the pitch. They think it's all over. Geoff Hurst hammers it home. 4-2. England's only World Cup. The only hat-trick in a World Cup final. It is now. Bobby Moore walked up the Wembley steps. 25 years old, captain of England, holding the Jules Rimet that Pickles had found. The Queen handed it to him. Moore wiped his hands on the velvet before he shook hers. Geoff Hurst, 3 goals, only hat-trick in a World Cup final. Alf Ramsey on the touchline, unsmiling, the only English manager to win a World Cup, knighted the next year. Eusebio's Portugal at home in Lisbon, 3rd. Beckenbauer, 20 years old, 2nd. North Korea on a flight back to Pyongyang. The Brazilian team somewhere recovering from Goodison Park. And the tournament becoming, in this moment of Bobby Moore's wiped hands, the cultural object it has been ever since. Extra time, Wembley. England 2, West Germany 2, the whole tournament, the whole afternoon, the whole weight of a nation, balanced on a knife's edge. The ball drops to Geoff Hurst, just inside the box. He has his back to goal. He turns. And he shoots. The ball cracks off the underside of the crossbar and comes straight down onto the line, or over it. It bounces up and it's hacked away. Did it cross? England was certain it had. The Germans were just as certain it had not. And the one man who had to decide, the referee, Gottfried Dienst, a Swiss, did not know. He had not seen it cleanly. So he did the only thing he could do. He turned and he ran to his linesman. The linesman was Tofik Bahramov. History would remember him wrongly as the Russian linesman, but he was from Azerbaijan, from Baku. Dienst asked him the only question in the world that mattered. Goal or no goal? Bahramov nodded. Goal. England 3, West Germany 2. No replay, no second angle, no goal line technology. One man's word, in one of the most important single seconds in the history of the sport. And here is the truth. 60 years on, we still do not know. The footage is inconclusive. The studies of the physics contradict each other. Some swear every part of the ball crossed the line, others that it never fully did. The argument has never been settled. It never will be. Only one thing was ever certain. The linesman raised his flag. The goal stood, and England were 1 goal from the world. In Azerbaijan, they never forgot the man who gave it. The national stadium in Baku carries Tofik Bahramov's name to this day. For as long as anyone could remember, England had played with wingers. 2 of them. Out wide, hugging the touchline, tearing past the full-back, whipping crosses into the box. It was an article of faith. It was simply how the English game was played. Alf Ramsey looked at it and threw it away. He built a side with no orthodox wingers at all. None. The newspapers were horrified. They mocked it, called his team the Wingless Wonders, and they did not mean it kindly. England, they said, would have no width, no flair, no way to break a good defence down. But Ramsey had seen something the rest of them had missed. Without wingers, he could flood the middle of the pitch. More runners, more tacklers, more control of the one area that actually decides football matches. The width would come instead from his fullbacks, surging forward from deep when the moment was right. Nobby Stiles sat in front of the back four and broke everything up. Bobby Charlton dropped deep and made everything happen. And the proof was written in the one number that mattered. England did not concede a single goal in the entire group stage. Just 3 across the whole tournament. The most controlled, most disciplined side in the competition. The Wingless Wonders were not a joke. They were the blueprint for the modern game. When the dust settled, the tournament's ledger was written. Champions, England, for the first time in their history. Runners-up, West Germany, who would have their revenge soon enough. Third, Portugal, the debutantes who lit up the whole tournament. Fourth, the Soviet Union. The Golden Boot, for the most goals, went to Eusebio. 9 of them, more than anyone else, a one-man argument for the finest individual tournament of the lot. He was the player the world went home talking about. There was no official Best Player award in 1966. That prize would not exist for years. But the name history settled on, the man remembered as England's finest that summer, was Bobby Charlton. The numbers, 89 goals across 32 matches. The biggest win of them all, West Germany's 5-0 dismantling of Switzerland. And more than 1.5 million people pouring through the turnstiles across 3 weeks of football. But the records that outlived every statistic were the firsts. England's first World Cup, and to this day, still their only one. The first ever held in the English-speaking world. And Geoff Hurst, the first man, and for a very long time, the only man, to score a hat-trick in a World Cup final. A record that has stood for 60 years. 12 weeks after the final, BBC Two went fully colour. Some 1966 matches had been broadcast in colour trial. The next World Cup, Mexico 1970, would be the first fully colour World Cup. The Telstar ball, named after the satellite that started it all in 1962, would arrive then. But 1966 carried the firsts that mattered to television. The first ever World Cup mascot, World Cup Willie, a lion in a Union Jack jersey sold on chewing gum cards. The first ever World Cup theme song, Lonnie Donegan, 3 Minutes of Skiffle, charted at number 24. The first international TV replay controversy, Bahramov's call, on Hurst's second. The first World Cup commentary line to outlive its commentator. 400 million people watched the final. 12 years earlier, the 1954 final had reached perhaps 50 million. The tournament had crossed the threshold. Pickles. The dog received a year's free dog food and a National Canine Defence League silver medal for finding the Jules Rimet. He died 14 months later, hanging on his lead chasing a cat. England's only World Cup remained the only one. Alf Ramsey was knighted the next year, dismissed in 1974, died in 1999. Bobby Moore captained England for 10 more years, died of cancer at 51. Geoff Hurst's hat-trick remains the only hat-trick in a World Cup final. 6 decades and counting. The Jules Rimet was stolen a second time in Rio in 1983 and never recovered. Melted down for the gold, almost certainly. World Cup Willie became Naranjito, became Piqué, became Striker, became Goleo, became Zakumi, became Fuleko, became Zabivaka, became Laib, became Maple. The tournament made a mascot tradition out of one lion. Eusebio coached Portuguese clubs, was given citizenship of Portugal in his 20s, despite being born in Mozambique under colonial rule, became Portugal's most famous footballer until Cristiano Ronaldo died in 2014. The "they think it's all over" line is the most quoted in football broadcasting. The World Cup became, in July 1966, what it has been ever since. The planetary television ritual the world tunes into every 4 years. Next, Mexico 1970, the first fully color World Cup, the Telstar Ball, the greatest team ever assembled, Brazil's last all-conquering generation. And the moment a man named Pelé came back to win a third. England had their afternoon. One star on the shirt, forever. But across the Atlantic, the Kings were plotting their return. 1970, Mexico, thin air, fierce heat, and Pelé, written off and out for revenge. Chasing a third World Cup, the world said he'd never win. That story is next.